Okay, folks, welcome to Wild Turkey Hunting Webinar, Biology for Hunters, Regulations, Where to Hunt, and Scouting. This is segment one of 3 nights. We have these always jam-packed, so we hope you can tune in for all of them. So a little bit of information tonight. Tonight's panelists will be Hannah Plumpton, our upland game bird biologist. She'll be covering biology and biology-related Q&A. Eric Gleason, Master Officer, Law Enforcement Division, Laws and Regs Q&A. And sometimes he is also around for some hunting, but that obviously is up to him. Then, of course, me, Hunter Engagement Coordinator as MC, hunting Q&A, and to narrate the Q&A at the very end. So the logistics overview goes like this. The webinar's length is 1 hour. We typically are on time. If we run a little bit over, it's only because we want to give you the best we can. It is recorded and distributed in equal to or less than 2 weeks. Sometimes that runs a little long. So if you can attend the live version, obviously you're going to get it a lot faster. The link that you're using tonight does not become the viewing link. It goes in the cloud first, and then it has to be made into a YouTube, and that's done by other staff. Q&A length is 30 minutes. We don't mind running a little bit over, but we try to get all your questions in that 30 minutes. Questions in writing only, and they must be topic specific, as you saw in the email, and they will be addressed at Q&A at question and answer, and not before. Chat hand raising is not monitored, so we ask that you do not do that. And please allow us to cover the material before writing questions, because a lot of the stuff that we do discuss per these topics tonight, and that's what we'll focus on, we usually cover it quite well. But obviously at the end, if you have a question, don't hesitate. Whether it be this website or this Wegs Digest, anything you can find relative to hunting is going to be in there. And thanks for taking the time tonight out of your busy schedule and joining us. Moving on. Obviously, if you've already attended any other program, I'm involved in hunting webinars and the Learn to Hunt workshops. Learn to Hunt workshops are primarily for the new folks, but then again, it is more or less wide open now for that hunter that maybe deer hunts and wants to turkey hunt, or the turkey hunter that wants to deer hunt. And so they are available. And I thank my panelists that I mentioned tonight. They've been very dedicated to this initiative. And so I'm very thankful that they're here with us tonight. Obviously, that is a long look at the programming for this year. I also have the process to register there. Likely already know that if you've gotten here tonight, but we have like 37 programs in 2025. So lots of stuff. One of the most important thing is obviously, as growing the program, is that for volunteer support, and that means whether instructors, instructor assistants, logistics assistants, even if someone is a new hunter, or even mentored hunts, which are very much a limiting factor. If anybody's interested, whether it be a landowner in hosting or helping us volunteer, please email me at learntohunt or lth@ncwildlife.org. Also an opportunity to say that Deke James, i.e. moi, is retiring this year. Official, unofficial date is November 1st. And I'll likely be gone the first weekend after October, because that is the last workshop. And what I want to see is that if I've met you before, I want to see you again. So plan on attending something in person. And if I've not ever met you, I want to see you. So I hope to see you folks. This has been a fantastic journey for me. And it's one that that I'm very lucky and very fortunate to be able to be involved in. With that, we're going to segue into Hannah and give a great biology overview. And one of the things I always said right from the start was no hunting initiative should be without a biology, because in that way you can learn a lot more about the species. And by learning about the species, it makes you a better hunter, and it also gives you a great deal of respect for that species. Take it away, Hannah.
Thanks, Deet. As Deet said, I'm Hannah Plumpton. I'm the upland game bird biologist for the Wildlife Resources Commission here in North Carolina. And so we're just going to dive right into it. And start with some general basic facts about wild turkey biology to help you all become better hunters. So to start with, adult male turkey is called a tom or a gobbler. And you'll hear me use those interchangeably throughout this webinar. And now some key facts or key points to identify whether a turkey is a male is first, he's got that nice protruderance off his chest. We call that a beard. He'll have a red and white, maybe a bit of blue in his head. He'll be a dark iridescent body with black tips on the tips of his feathers, on his breast, shoulders, and back, giving him an overall darker appearance. Now, even in dark shadows and under tree canopy, we can still see a lot of those characteristics. You know, he'll have that multicolored head, a bit of red and blue and white into it. You can see that beard protruding. And even in that darkness under the canopy, you can still see some iridescence with his feathers. In another look in the sunshine, we can see how dark these birds look like in this lighting. We can see a really bright red and white head, particularly on the one on the right. We can see the beards on both the birds. And one of the other key factors I didn't mention was you can see spurs on their legs, and you can even see a spur right here on the back leg of the turkey on the left-hand side. So another classic thing to tell if a turkey is a male, particularly from a long distance, is when you see them in this classic strutting pose. And this pose is, you know, a male is showing how handsome he is with his tail fan spread out. He's all puffed up. He's dragging his wings. He's showing he's the dominant bird, and all to the hens how handsome he is to all those females. So a turkey will gobble for long distances. Gobbling, he's telling all the hens or females, hey, here I am, come to breed with me. And this is really important for hunters. If you get nothing else from this, remember when you're hunting, you're calling and sounding like a hen, and you're trying to call the gobbler to you. This goes against nature. When he's out there, he's calling, and the hens are coming to him. So when we're hunting, one of the challenges is that we're trying to get the gobbler to go against his nature and wait for the hens to come to him. So we can ID males and adults from juveniles through a couple different methods. One of the ways is looking at their tail fans. Turkeys have between 5,000 and 6,000 feathers on their bodies, and they molt those on a select routine or schedule. And doing that allows us to tell the difference between our adults or our 2-year-old birds, toms and gobblers, to our 1-year-old juvenile birds that we also call jakes a lot of the time. And one of the ways with their tail feathers, an adult tail feather is longer than a juvenile's tail feathers. So when they molt, they'll molt from inside out. So his adult feathers will be longer than his juvenile feathers. And they give you that broken, uneven tail fan. And so that's a good way to indicate in the field from a distance whether that's an adult or a juvenile turkey. Another way is through beard length. Beards, what's coming out of their center of their chest, are modified feathers that actually grow continuously starting when they're young. So a jake or a 1-year-old bird, they're just starting to grow their beard, so it's not very long, it's very short. It's less than 7 inches. And then by the time he reaches 2 years old and is considered an adult gobbler, his beard length will be over 7 inches in length. Now, because they're continuously growing, they don't continuously grow in length. They hit a maximum length. And that's because the ends are continually wearing off as well whether they're dragging on the ground, feeding, or walking through brush. Another way we can kind of tentatively age turkeys is through the length of their spur. Now, there are a lot of exceptions to this, so we take this with a whole heaping pile of salt, but one way you can look at possibly aging a turkey through the is a Jake will have a very short rounded spur. It's typically about a half an inch or less. About a 2-year-old bird will have anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to an inch long spur. It's a lot more straighter, a bit more pointed, and a 3-year-old bird or older will have about an inch or longer and be much more pointed. Again, this is a lot of exceptions, but it's a rough rule of thumb. Another way we can tell the difference between adult and juvenile birds is through their 9th and 10th primary feathers. So those are the last 2 wing feathers on a bird that the arrows are pointing to. On the juvenile wing on the left-hand side, we can see that white barring on the wing doesn't go all the way to the end of those tips. There's a couple, about an inch or so, that is just dark brown, and the feather is pointed. As compared to our adult wing on the right-hand side, the white barring goes all the way to the end of the feather. The feather tips are worn and ragged from the gobblers strutting and dragging them on the ground. So those are 2 ways that we can tell another way to tell the difference between adult and juvenile. So let's talk about the hen or the female turkey. So she, like a lot of wildlife species, are a lot smaller and more drab than her male counterparts. She's about half the size of a gobbler, weighing about 10 pounds, where our gobbler is closer to 20 pounds and a Jake is about 15 pounds. And so some distinguishing characteristics for her is she typically will lack a beard. She has a dull grayish blue head. She has a very dull brown body through the buffy tips on her feathers, and she lacks spurs on her legs. So to get a better look on this, again, females will have a brown, and that's due to the tips of their feathers being brown, versus the male will have that darker black tip and iridescent look, and we see that based on their feathers. So I said the hens typically don't have a beard, and only about 5 to 10% of hen turkeys do have a beard in a population. And so they are legal to hunt it, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but they are a legal bird to hunt. We at WRC don't encourage it because hens are your breeders. They're reproducing, creating more turkeys for future hunting. But again, that's to help keep everybody legal. So this is another good look at a hen turkey in some better light. You can see that she's a lot browner compared to the iridescent male. She's drab overall. She doesn't have spurs on her legs. You can see her beard. It's shorter and straggly compared to a beard that her adult gobbler counterpart will have. And her head's that dull grayish blue kind of color. So turkeys are extremely paranoid birds. Not surprising. They're a prey species. Lots of things like to eat them. So they have really good eyesight. It's about 3 times better than humans. They can see 270 degrees or 2/3 of a circle. And they can hear 2 times better than human at least. So they're extremely paranoid, which makes them challenging to hunt. And a lot of times they stick up their head to look above the vegetation, looking at their surroundings, keeping an eye. And often when you're hunting, that may be the only part of a turkey you see is their head. So to kind of emphasize, a male turkey will have that bright red and white head, and the female will have a duller, grayer color on her head. So turkeys, as soon as they can fly, which is about 10 to 14 days, they start roosting and spending the night in trees. And this is to keep them safer from predators off the ground. There's a lot less predators that can get them in the trees. They often will roost over or near water. Again, another layer to help protect them from those ground predators. They're less likely to go in the water. And if they do, they can hear them and be aware of them. They'll often roost in similar locations as they have preferred roosting spots. So if you keep that in mind if you're going out scouting ahead of time. But even if you know what tree they roost in, that doesn't mean that they'll be there in the morning. Something may spook them in the night, and you're never sure where they're going to land once they go out of the turkey. It could be right in front of you. It could be completely in the opposite direction. So turkeys young are called poults, and a group of young turkeys or poults is called a brood. And so they really rely on what we call early grassland habitat. They like areas where there's a lot of cover. They're perfectly snack size, so they have a really low survival rate. Again, lots of things like to eat them. So they want to be in areas of high grasslands where they can walk around but have cover. In areas that have a lot of wildflowers where there are insects. Turkey poults do a lot of growing in their first few weeks of life. They'll grow in size and they grow several sets of feathers. So they heavily rely on that high protein insect diet to be able to grow those new sets of feathers. Unfortunately, brooding and nesting cover in North Carolina is limited across the landscape, so that kind of limits how much our turkey population can grow. And so this is a really good picture of a nice, good looking area for turkey broods. And in fact, you can't even see it, but there is a turkey brood in this photo. It's got a lot of black-eyed Susans by the look of it, lots of grass. It's tall enough that the turkeys are covered and protected and not easy to be seen by predators, as well as having a lot of availability to insects and to move through the grass easily. So as we walk into fall and winter, turkeys start to gather up out of their small groups and individual groups into large flocks. Not unusual to see flocks of 40, 50, upwards of 100 birds in a flock. Males will gather up together in their bachelor groups, and hens and young of the year will gather up together as well. This is extremely helpful. You got all those eyes and ears looking for predators, so you're safer. They all have really high survival rates this time of year. And there are also a lot of people looking for food to help keep you fed. Now, in the wintertime, it's not unusual, especially in late winter, to see gobblers strutting and starting to gobble. And that's because turkeys have a hierarchy and a pecking order. So in flocks, there is a dominant bird all the way down to the least dominant bird, and that's a fluid situation. And it's really important to know this hierarchy because those at the top of this hierarchy in the pyramid, if they're males, they'll be some of the top, do most of the breeding, they have best access to food and cover. Hens will have the first rights to breed, as well as, having the best places to nest with high cover, leaving those hens at the bottom of the pecking order in areas that don't have a lot of cover, making them more vulnerable to being predated and their nests being predated. So as we go through fall, it's not uncommon in winter to see these flocks and occasionally see some strutting birds, and of course, showing who's the dominant bird in challenges. And again, it's a fluid situation. So if a bird was more dominant than one yesterday, that doesn't mean he's more dominant than him today. So he must check again. And so they're constantly checking throughout the season. So spring is a very important time for turkeys and hunters alike. And so we get our turkeys gobbling and they'll strut. And again, hens are typically coming to him, the gobbler, for breeding. And when you're hunting, you're trying to, again, go against nature and call the gobbler to you. And if a hen is receptive, she'll get on the ground and a male will briefly copulate with her, and then he's done. He has no other part in reproduction and breeding other than to breed with the hen. And so a hen will lay, once she's bred, she'll find an area and cover where she can be protected and not easily seen, but she can see, and she'll dig a shallow divot in the ground. And then she'll lay about an egg a day until she lays all her eggs, about 10 to 15 eggs, and then she'll start incubating them for 28 days. And this is her most vulnerable time because she's on the ground at night, open to predation. So once we have 28 days, our turkey poults hatch from the eggs. Turkey poults hatch from their eggs. They're very similar to chickens. They're born precocious, so their eyes are open. They have downy feathers. They're up and walking, and within a couple hours of hatching, they're off leaving the nest looking for food. So gobbling's really important to our turkey hunters. That's what really gets their blood boiling come springtime. They want to hear that turkey gobbling. So several years ago, we put out a whole bunch of acoustic recorders across the state to measure turkey gobbling. And we spread out over 4 years. We had over 50 locations to monitor turkey gobbling. And what we found was turkey gobbling peaked right around or just before the start of turkey season, but it maintained high gobbling levels throughout the turkey season, and then it dies out towards the middle of May and quickly drops off. That's not to say we don't hear turkey gobbling in February. You know, they're doing dominance. And again, turkey gobbling, this is all the gobbles over all the years combined. Turkey gobbling is extremely variable. You can have a location, one spot, they'll hear 30 gobbles over a year, and then a mile down the road, they'll hear 300 gobbles. And what was a good 300 gobble location one year, the next year they may hear 50 gobbles. So it's extremely variable and extremely site specific. But overall, gobbling occurs and remains high throughout the turkey season. And we hear a lot of our gobbling occurring in the morning prior to sunrise, about that 15 minutes to prior to that sunrise, we have a peak of it. That's not surprising. Our turkeys are on the roost, they're gobbling, telling all the hens they are where they are. They're also telling a predator where they are to come eat them. So they're somewhat safe in that tree. They're going to gobble, they'll fly down, they may gobble a little bit on the ground, but a lot of times they're less likely to gobble once they're on the ground. Not to say that they won't gobble at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because they will, but the bulk of the gobbling occurs just before sunrise. So turkeys have a very large home range, both on a daily area where they cover and where they cover in a year. So they can cover upwards of 400 to 500 acres in a single day, and close to 2,000 acres in a single year. So if you're out turkey hunting, you may have to put your boots and hike a long way to find a turkey, because they may have been in an area but something spooked them, or they moved on to a different part of their range. So you may have to walk a while before you find a turkey. Now, the ideal habitat for turkey is really where a bunch of different habitats come together. They like a mixture of mature forest, young forest with those walls of saplings, old overgrown field and grassy land areas, as well as some agricultural fields. And so if you're out hunting, roads in the middle of woods, small openings, clearings, and fields are really good areas to find turkeys when they're out gobbling in the springtime. So to kind of give you a visual, this is a really good visual of turkey habitat in the mountains. We got mature forest in the foreground, and we got that nice openings and grasslands in the front where they can strut. There's great wildflowers to nest and brood in for turkeys. So this is really good habitat for them in the mountains. Of course, on the coast, we have completely different looking habitat, but still good habitat. We got a lot of, a freshly harvested pine stand with some new good brooding tover, a nice road for strutting. And then on the left side of the road, we got that thinned pine stand. It's thick and brushy underneath. It's good nesting cover, as well as that agricultural field and the mature pine stand in the back of the photo. Again, in the Piedmont, they like that mix of different habitats all together, that nice lower vegetation on the left side of the road with the thicker stuff behind it, some mature trees to roost in, as well as that thick saplings on the right side of the road. So when you're out looking for turkeys, you may not always hear turkeys, but that doesn't mean that there's not turkeys in an area. So some things to look for are tracks. Turkeys typically will have those 3 toes in the front. You might see a 4th toe in the back. Because hens are small and our gobblers, they have smaller tracks. They're about 3 and 4 inches big, and our gobblers are 5 to 6 inches big. Another thing to look for is scat or poop. Hens will have a curlicue one like we have on the left side, and gobblers will have a J-shaped poop like we do on the right side. And that'll tell you turkeys have been around in the last couple of days. And also keep an eye on the leaf litter and in the pine straw. If you're seeing it lightly turned up and light scratching on the surface, that's a good sign. It's turkey scratching, looking for food, insect seeds that got under those leaves. If you're seeing large amounts of the dirt being stirred up, that wasn't turkeys, those were feral pigs. So that was kind of biology, but I really want to get a couple of things before we end this section. Before we can really know about turkeys, we have to remember where we came from. Turkey populations, really declined due to lack of habitat and over-harvesting. So in the 1970s, we closed our fall seasons, which were really long and liberal bag limits, to have a very shortened conservative spring season. And then we took a lot of captured wild turkeys and located them to portions of the state that had really good turkey habitats, and they just didn't have any turkeys nearby. And we finished that up in 2000. And so that's not to say turkeys wouldn't have made it there eventually, we just sped up that process. So important things with our hunter harvest. So for the last few years, we have been averaging about 24,000 turkeys harvested each year. Last year, we had about 10% of the total harvest that occurred were jakes, so a little less than what we had in 2022. And then we've had about an 11% increase in harvest over the last 3-year average. The top counties occur in the southeast: Duplin, Bladen, Pender. That's not surprising. Those counties are very big counties, and they're very agricultural and rural counties. So there's a lot of mixture of farm fields and woodlands all mixed together there. But if you look at available hunting land and harvest across the state, it's pretty well evenly harvested rate across the state. Hunter success. So harvesting a turkey is good and amazing, but it's not what our hunters find the most important thing, which is good because about 3/4 of our hunters spend each turkey season not harvesting a bird. But they really enjoy the opportunity to go out and hear birds, to call back and forth with a gobbler and work him, spending time with their friends and family. Harvesting a bird is always exciting, but it's an added bonus, and interacting with other hunters, or not having a lot of interaction with other hunters, They like to go out and be left alone in the woods other than with their friends and family. So turkey populations are important, and to manage them, we have to manage their habitat, and to do that, we have to actively manage it through timber thinning and harvest, prescribed burning, spraying herbicide for invasive wildlife, managing your fallow fields and grasslands, and do that. And then for those folks who are interested in managing their own property for wildlife, we have people here on staff at WRC who would love to come out with you and meet with you and create a management plan for wildlife on your property to meet your goals. And with that, I've gone through the biology.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Great job as always. First thing we're going to start out with here, folks, is the laws and regs. As we say, keep it safe, legal, and ethical. As Hannah pointed out, due to the era of market hunting, which was pre-1900, that's when there was no regulations, and populations of a lot of different species were dropped so low that we almost lost them. So laws and regs are extremely important, as is providing information when you do harvest wildlife. So very important. I'm going to move relatively quick. I have a lot of slides, but you'll see it for a while, and do know you're going to see the recording. And also keep in mind that when it comes to any information that we've provided, and especially relative to hunting, again, the website and the Regs Digest, I like to hold a Regs Digest. I like to be able to view it, especially when I'm looking at public land. I'm a public land hunter. So before you even get out on the ground, make sure you review the stuff, and you're going to hear that again. So this is basically the regulations, quite a bit less than, say, the way deer is managed, because deer is more a little bit micromanaged depending on areas of the state, but turkey hunting regulations are pretty much statewide, and you can see the page where that is. So as Hannah pointed out, a male or bearded bird only. So as long as that beard has a bird, and just to reiterate what she said, there were situations where folks were focused on the beard, and usually it is that way. In my home state, in Pennsylvania, up there it is male bearded turkey. So there's no such thing as a bearded hen. So rather than us having an illegal take, it is okay to take that bearded hen, but it's also a bird that if you can avoid it, it's best avoided, because as Hannah pointed out, that's the future generation. So the youth season, under 18, April 5th through April 11th. And I'm not sure if the legislation, it's not for this year, Hannah. It's going to be changing in the future, isn't it? Where it's only a day or two for the youth hunt. Is that true?
Yes.
Or I should ask Derek.
It'll go into effect next year.
Okay,
then that's a 2-day youth hunt.
That's what I figured. But I just thought of that because I heard talk of it. So there's a few days for that, and it will be changing next year. Adult statewide, April 12th through May 10th. Daily limit is 1, only 1 during youth week. Possession season is 2, so you could have 2 in the freezer. No dogs or electronic calls, and there's more information about artificial lights, electronic calls on page 56. No handguns or rifles, only shotguns or archery equipment. Knowingly take wild birds from within 300 yards of any place in which bait has been placed. An area is considered baited until 10 days after consumed or otherwise removed. Basically, it is this. If you are going to hunt your property and you don't have any bait there, because you should not for turkey, unlike deer, where we can currently use bait for the most part, even if your landowner uses bait, maybe he don't hunt turkeys, you cannot hunt within 300 yards of that. And that question come up. So make sure when you're doing your scouting that there is no bait in the area in which you hunt. That's the law. Cannot possess live wild turkeys or live birds indistinguishable from wild turkeys, and hunter orange is not required. When you do get a harvest of big game, and you will have a big game harvest report card with your license, you will need your big game tags to hunt. There was the traditional paper version, which I tended to use since I was an older person, like a hard copy of something. But now you have that Go Outdoors app where you can do everything you need to on there. And all this information is in the Regs Digest for you to view later. So immediately upon harvested and before moving to big game animal, you are required to immediately validate corresponding day and month on the paper or electronic report card. So you can see it there in paper. With the paper, you would notch both the month and the day, and they make it pretty easy on that Go Outdoors app. And I actually used it this year for deer hunting. Now, you must report that kill before the animal skin dismembered, left unattended by the successful hunter, animal placed in the possession of another by 12 noon the next day. And now with the way it is, you can tag your deer immediately in the Go Outdoors app. And even if you don't have service, you can still report it. So I will tag it and I will report it as well. And then you get a harvest ID and authorization number. Authorization number, and you write it on that tag. That way you're done and ready to go. So again, I would read more after about this because it's extremely important for our biologists to manage this species. Isn't that correct, Hannah? Okay,
That is correct, Steve.
okay, absolutely. So do know that anyone license exempt must obtain a license exempt big game harvest report card. And this typically happens in a situation where youth under the age of 16 are license exempt. They need their own tags. So you cannot let youth use your tags. And even if you're a landowner, we still want to collect that data. So you can also, if you're going to hunt your own land or close family members do, you want to get your license exempt big game harvest report card. And that is definitely in the Regs Digest as well. Remember, one male or bearded turkey per day, not moldable. So we want to avoid crippling, flock shooting, allow the hens get out of the way. So you think about this. Now, this is very close. It'd be easy to take, say, one of these birds like this from the other. But once you get out to 30 yards or so, you want to be very careful because even taking a bird this 30, 40 yards, you could hit and be one of these. So you want them to separate from the flock. Here's a situation where you have 3 gobblers at one time. That is not a shot you want to take. And someone would think, well, this is a good shot. But, and I always point this out at the workshops, that is a tail fan in behind. So you will become really excited when you're hunting, but you want to make sure you only take 1 legal bird per day. Keep that in mind. Turkey hunting safety rules, very important. Turkey hunting has its own safety rules. Number 1 on top, always positively identify your target. Obviously is not a hen, preferably, whether it's a bearded hen, but definitely not a non-bearded hen, and whether it be a gobbler. That seems common sense, but not always, especially in the past, and I'll make that point clear in a minute. Make your position known. Be out there with camo. Don't be hiding under the leaves or crawling on the ground. You want to avoid those things. Never stalk a turkey or turkey sound. Keep in mind that turkeys are bipedal, and so are humans, 2 legs. And so you can sound like a turkey, and a turkey can sound like you walking in the woods. Assume every noise movement's another hunter. That way you're always prepared. You don't want to shoot at sound, indoor movement. Protect your back. We typically do that by sitting against a tree whenever we can, as wide as our shoulder. It's not always available, but know your hunting area and know who's in it whenever you can. Shout stop to alert approaching hunters. Don't run a box call or use a diaphragm or a slate call or scratch in the leaves. You just say, hey, hunter over here, stop. Eliminate those colors, red, white, blue, and black, because as you saw already through Hannah's biology overview, those are colors on a gobbler. Pre-select the zone of fire, and I'll state it right up front, and you're going to get drilled with it even more tomorrow night. If you know your shotgun's maximum effective range, you will know your zone of fire, and you don't shoot out of it or risk a cripple or a lost turkey. Choose only safe and ethical hunting partners. That should be common sense. And you're out there likely around others as well. Practice courtesy and self-control at all times. Respect other hunters. We both use public land. I use public land. This is a situation where during the era of, well, right after the 80s when I started hunting, statewide in states in 1991, you can see 175 turkey hunting related incidents, and they're not accidents, they're incidents. 10 of them were fatal. And I saw that in a VHS video, and it obviously was official. Well, this person that you're looking at with the pellets, and it's like 28, 27 or 28, he was a friend of mine's cousin. And obviously he survived it, but that is no way to start your turkey hunt. I would say that 99% that those things that happened in the 90s don't for the most part happen today. In fact, most instances are falls from tree stands, but that one did happen about 3 years ago. And that was because the person was carrying decoys that weren't covered and somebody shot at decoys that they shouldn't have. So keep that in mind when you're out there. The attempt's not to scare you, it's to keep you safe and to keep others safe as well. Where to hunt is the number one question we get from new to hunting folks, and that's because most of the people that are growing up today, and even young adults, weren't like from my generation, where a lot of people hunted private land and still do in North Carolina. But so many of the new hunters that, again, haven't hunted for a long time are looking for public. So our goal is to connect you to resources. And that's exactly what we do, both in our Regs Digest and online. So if I go to a Days of Yore Alabama trip, and this was long before the WWW, and I mean the World Wide Web, I used to use these DeLorme maps, which I loved, and also road atlases. And I went to Alabama one year. There was no such thing as a navigation app on the phone because there wasn't even a phone. It was connected to wire at the house. So I plotted and wrote down on a sheet of paper every sign, every road sign all the way to Alabama. Well, you can best believe that I was not distracted like people are today. So it's a lot easier today using the apps, but that was the way it used to be. And there's probably some listeners that have been there. Everything, folks, like I told you, website and Regs Digest, and before you get out there, you want to review that. Or as I say, like the old Prego spaghetti sauce, they used to say, it's in there. That's where all the good stuff was. Well, it's the same way. So don't plan your hunt. Don't get out in the field until you've reviewed this information, whether it be laws or about game lands, because there's typically two main laws. One are the species regulations, and then there's local laws as well. And then there's game lands laws for those that are interested in hunting game lands, as do I. I throw these private land tips in there. I don't really hunt private land at all, but you may have an opportunity, maybe within your family or other folks, or you just want to try knocking on the door as I did years ago. Yeah, just a few things you want to keep in mind. Request permission off season, although that picture here in the center showing the landowner shaking the hand with a hunter, you don't want to go in there like you're all ready to walk in the woods and be presumptive about it. It's best to go during the off season and say, hey, you know, I'm interested in hunting. This is what I hunt, rather than, hey, you're going to let me hunt and here's how I'm showing you you're going to do it, because I'm already prepared. Respect this time. Don't get long-winded like I do on slides. Just be brief, to the point, courteous. Offer incentives, bartering. Say, hey, you know, you let me hunt, I'll help you here with the property, grass cut, maintenance. That they may not even be interested, but that's also a way to get in the door rather than just leave me hunt your property for nothing. Respect the property and others, and that means everything from pulling over and not digging out with a big 4x4, or leaving gates open, or leaving garbage, things that are common sense, really. Don't expect permanent access. This should be something you should be checking on yearly to make sure that you do it, even if that person says, no, you don't need to talk to me. Just always check with them. Unlike in the days when I started hunting in 1972 in central Pennsylvania, you could knock on the door and most folks, rural areas, would say, yeah, sure. And they'd even point sometimes deer out, or where you could get small game. Nowadays, the number one concern with many landowners is liability. We live in a litigious world, and I spent some time with NC State on the road talking to landowners. I did my own presentation, and their number one concern was exactly that, liability concerns. And you can get liability insurance for yourself. You know, a simple Google, hunter liability insurance, and you know, having that in combination with, you know, hey, I'm safe, I took hunter safety certification, could potentially get you in the door. You do need written permission with the Landowner Protection Act. That is something that is absolutely required. You see where this purple paint is, and you need it dated within the past 12 months and need the landowner to sign it and that you carry it on your person. That is extremely important. Know that if you get stopped and you're on private property and you don't have this for a private property like that, that is under the Landowner Protection Act, you could be cited. And if you're on somebody's property, whether they're in a Protection Act or not, without permission, you're trespassing. As I said, fingers first, then boots on the ground. This is an example of our interactive map, which is on the website. Fairly easy to find. You go into Black Band, hunting, where to hunt and shoot, boom. And of course, the highlighted areas here are relative to the CWD locations. This is not a CWD deer related workshop. This is about turkey, but all those diamonds are public land. 2 million acres, probably a little bit more in the Game Lands program. I use them myself. Lots of opportunity to roam. The Game Lands map, obviously, will take you to both the interactive and the downloadable PDFs, and they're big headings and easy to find with a little bit of walking with your fingers. So there, when looking at that page, there's the interactive map, which you can zoom in, you can look at specific game lands, and I show some pictures here too. I'll usually start out there and I'll show you something else when we get to that. And also these are great, which are downloadable georeference PDFs that can be put on your mobile device with an app. I'll show you that in a second as well. I definitely use these in North Carolina, and I use this as well, as long as something else. So you spend your time here first, and you will save a lot of time in the field, rather than just walking aimlessly like I do like to do. So there's an example of pulling Jordan Lake up. Go a little bit closer. Parking spots, camping areas, and don't camp on game lands where you're not permitted. You have to be in a designated camping area. So it just goes to show, and you can change the base map and everything else. Excuse me, needed some water and talking too loud. There's an example of a PDF. There was a Buffalo Cove. That was one of the first turkey hunting game lands I went to. I like the mountains. I'm not a flatlander. You'll see some pictures where, you know, I spent a lot of time on ridge running, and that's what I enjoy doing. So you pull that up. That is Buffalo Cove. It has a legend. You take Avenza. You get Avenza app on your phone, georeference map, boom. You can follow the borders. You'll never be off the border, and they are extremely helpful. I like Avenza. And I will say this about the boundary marker, and a disclaimer. This is typically what a boundary mark looks like. It's not, it looks red in the picture, but it's actually orange. 2 orange bands and then a sign. The disclaimer is that there are times when these trees fall down and or they get buried and or, you know, the paint wears off. With that Avenza app and the downloadable PDFs, you're never off the border. And so that helps. Most of the game lands are marked very well. But again, that happens. Trees fall. I also like to coordinate further with Google Map. You may like Earth. You may have never used these, but this gives me a broader look than even the game lands map, and looking at some other lands that may be part within the game lands as well, and some places to start out. And for me, whenever you're on here, and you probably already know it, you know, I'm a 64-year-old guy, so I didn't have this technology like you do, you know, especially if you're younger. You right click on that Google map, and I'm pretty sure you can do it on Google Earth, and you immediately have decimal degrees coordinates. And I use that in my navigation app on my phone. This is another one that is very popular with a lot of the new hunters I meet onX. It's, you know, people love it. Much broader. You can see property, much better topography, and it is, yeah, it's extremely popular, and most people are using it. So something you want to consider. And again, I say onX if you want it. Yeah, great. Avenza for the maps. I'm still a handheld GPS user. So I'm old school. I like my handheld GPS, many of which are obsolete. Permit hunts are something else. They're on game lands, not all game lands. Some game lands have permit hunts, whether it be for deer, turkey, bear, even small game. What permit hunts do is they lessen the population of hunters on certain game lands that get a lot of traffic. So thereby you get a better quality hunt that's not crowded. They're very popular even with our own staff, and a lot of people do draw for them, and it is by drawing, and I'll mention that coming up as we go. So you go to the website there, apply or purchase, and that gets you in. And then you start the search. I mean, here's turkey. And the thing you want to keep in mind right now is that deadline. You were lucky with these webinars, and we start them in February. The workshops start in March. That will be pretty much over by the time we get to the workshop. But you have a little bit of time to check out the turkey permits. Do you need them? No. Most game lands do not have permit hunts. They're wide open, but it's something that you may want to consider. And a good way to find out for me, the way I like to look at all the game lands, although you can look at it on the website, I like a Regs Digest, and this is a flipping book. I like a hard copy, but in a flipping book, you can go all the way back, look at all the pages, and look at all the game lands, because each game land is a little bit different. Turkey seasons are all the same, but they're a little bit different on which has permit hunts, which don't, and a number of other things. And then you can check local laws as well. So keep that in mind. We also have shooting ranges in North Carolina. There they are. You might want to check them out. The one that I'll be at this weekend for the workshop is at the Wayne E. Smith Cold Mountain Range. We can shoot archery equipment at the site we're going to be at, but not firearms. So we'll be at Cold Mountain. Lots of good opportunity there. You may not have one in your backyard. They're working to get more, but yeah, great opportunity. So my tips, quick, fingers first, Game Lands Interactive Map and GeoReference PDFs, and I do use them. Study the area topography and Google Map. That's what I look at. Definitely Avenza. You got a GPS. Then that's when I put my boots on the ground, and I do this in multiple states, not just North Carolina, while adhering to those game lands borders. And again, two orangish look or reddish looking paint bands, check nest high, diamond sight. That is the game lands. Scouting is the #1 turkey hunting prerequisite, or as I like to copy from Ray Eye, legendary turkey hunter from Missouri, that had the 2 great original VHS tapes. I think you're going to see a picture in it. VHS, probably a lot of you don't have VHS. But he said, I scout turkeys aggressively, and so should you. And there's nothing said more true, both in preseason listening and getting out there before the season and finding out where the sign is, like Hannah was showing you. And you're going to see a little bit more redundance of the sign, but you can never have enough of it. I like to say, especially as a ridge runner, better shape you keep yourself moving and getting rest and eating right and more knowledge even beyond these webinars. And there's a ton of stuff on that www World Wide Web now more than ever before. As I'll likely mention later, I just had basically VHS, DVDs, and magazines, and I poured over them. Now you have so much more of a wealth. Just be careful of someone trying to sell you something. Some scouting tips I prefer for spring and the fall. I spend a lot of time in the deer woods, and if I'm seeing sign there, that's a place I'll focus in the spring. I like to spend 2 months scouting and 1 month listening. The only challenge I have relative to scouting and listening now, I travel far away. If I'm hunting in North Carolina, I'm going to hunt in the mountains. If I'm starting out in Virginia, I'm 4 hours away. And the point is, you don't have as much time because of that thing called WORK. And I don't mean a radio station to scout, but you try to get out as much as you can and whenever you have the opportunity. And I like to listen at least a month ahead for that gobbling sound that Hannah mentioned, that is a symphony unwritten. When you hear the gobble, if it don't send chills up your spine, then you might want to check your pulse. Practice calling, but not on turkeys. Locator calls only preseason. not calling turkeys in before the season. If you do, you can potentially educate them, and they're going to be far less likely to come to a call if you call and they walk up to a human. Pattern both your shotgun and turkeys. You're going to hear more about that patterning definitely tomorrow night for your shotgun. And basically, when it comes to patterning a gobbler, if you can spend time prior to the season and figure out where that turkey wants to go, because if he doesn't have his hens after he first starts calling and they go to him, he's going to hit the ground and he knows where he's going to go, where he can meet the ladies. And if you can pattern that and be there before he gets there, you don't even need to make a call. Most people don't have the time to pattern turkeys, truly. Never be afraid to go in blind, and that means go to a new spot. I've already picked spots on that old gazetteer and said, I'm going there. Went there, walked around, and sometimes it turns out to be some really good hunting spots. But it's always great to have a plan A, B, C, and D. If you have a first spot, you find somebody beats you there, or you're not hearing birds, you already have multiple spots. Know the topography and plan setups accordingly. When you're hunting with turkeys, as was pointed out during the biology segment, their eyes are extremely keen. And so using topography to your advantage to kind of break up your image, even beyond camo, is always good. Respect turkeys, the land, and other hunters. Common sense stuff. Public land etiquette. I added this probably last year or the year before. It might have started in the fall, but these I consider unwritten rules, and that happens to be the Red Roof Chevy Inn. I'm known as that local area in Western Virginia as the guy that ties his truck to the tree, and I'll stay there for up to 2 weeks and live in that truck. Quite accommodating. First come, first serve is a general rule, folks. You're honest, and you're probably going to hear me say it again, but you see a small tract of land. You got there late. It's not a big place. You're best likely to choose your plan B. Keep in mind that, and I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I'll go into the next bullet. Small tract, see another vehicle, move on in most cases, because you have to keep in mind that unlike deer hunting, where you're stationary, and if you're out of sight from another hunter, you're out of mind. As soon as that turkey gobbles, another hunter and you are going to be trying to move in as close as you possibly can to set up and then call that bird to you. And so you don't want, multiple people around one turkey. Goal is to remain out of hearing distance, obviously, because if another turkey hunter can hear your turkey, they can move in. It's not a bad thing. It can happen. You don't need to worry about it, but that's why I'll usually pick isolated areas or hunt an area where I'm most likely not going to expect someone, and you'll hear more of that as we move on. Encounter another, go elsewhere or negotiate. And I say negotiate because it was last year, for example, I was in my home state. It was opening morning. I was there at a parking lot 4:30 in the morning, which was plenty early. There was already another truck there, which usually I don't encounter someone early. And as soon as I pulled in, they got out of the vehicle and I walked over, was very kind and courteous. And I said, hey, listen, guys, where are you headed? And they told me, and I said, okay, I'll go the other way. Done. So that way you're not just walking into the same area. And another reason for scouting more. A hen turkey call could be another hunter. Always keep that in mind. And I've run into calls that sounded, maybe a little bit off. And I thought, is that another hunter? It didn't quite sound like a hen. In some instances, I found out it was a hen, and I thought that hen was a really bad caller. But that was only to my human ears, because all hens do sound a little bit different. And but if it is, obviously, that's a situation that you want to keep in mind. A walking turkey could be another hunter. You heard me say turkeys and people are bipedal. So if you hear the sound of walking that sounds like a turkey, it could be another hunter. So just beware. Some tips, just a few. Be there first or last. I say that I'm an early morning hunter. I'm an early morning riser. And as Hannah pointed out, most of the gobbling is going to be for sunrise. And that's true. The bird's calling his hens. He flies down. He don't need to talk anymore. He just needs to strut. By late morning, though, or often mid-morning, people are going home and doing other things. You can stay in the woods. And in this state, you can hunt all day, which the northern states where I start out typically, you can only hunt till noon. Begin back in rather than primary access points. I can't say how many times I've seen people drive down the road and run a box call right off the road. Well, it's a good way to hear a turkey, but it's also you're essentially educating that turkey if all of a sudden he's gobbling at a vehicle out on the road. Usually with a larger track, I will get back in and call that bird inside, not from access points. And in most, but not all cases, he's more likely to address me because he probably feels a little bit safer. Mid-morning, late day hunts may mean having the woods to yourself, and it's true, especially as the season progresses, many people give up and hunt whenever you can, even if, you know, you want to take some leaves, because usually Saturdays can be busy, but weekdays not. I grew up in the Ridge and Valley area, basically a big mountain like this, 2,000-foot elevation, smaller than North Carolina. And then there's typically agriculture down in the bottom. My point of showing you this, the birds, all birds, whether it be gobblers, hens, and broods of the year, and then jakes, usually they form their own groups because they were the loud teenagers. They'd be on the mountain feeding on mast crops. They all roosted there. But in the spring, as was pointed out in biology, the hens will seek out bugging areas for those poults as they're getting older. So isn't there kind of some irony to it, is that when that bird gobbles wherever he is, the hens will go to him. He demands them to come to him, which makes hunting hard because we're calling the gobbler to us. But the irony in it is that once he's on the ground, they rule the roost. And wherever they go, he goes. And that's why they'll make them transitions from big hardwood ridges to these areas in the fall. So kind of think in mind. Now, that doesn't mean there's not birds up here. As long as there's some openings, logging roads, and things like that you'll see pictures of, they can still be there. But by far, in a scenario like this, they'll be hitting those bottoms and roosting maybe in bottom trees or in trees that you can't see. Flatter relief habitat is what you're likely to see in North Carolina. I've hunted some of it. And of course, some of these areas can be wide open. And although we'll talk more about it in tactics on how to handle this kind of flat, especially if it's open, you're going to likely encounter that here. Whether it be pines or hardwoods, I like a mixture of both. As a general rule, that is true, and I've discovered it myself. You can't really see this ridge that well, but there's some spots where you step on this. If you like stumble over a rock, you'll roll almost right down to the river. It'll stop you, but I often find birds roosted in those areas and few people want to get in there. So I do seek out isolated areas, and I am a ridge runner. I like the mountains. As you saw some sign earlier, this was actually some openings that were, we call it raked. It was scratched, wide open. Get more into talking about turkey strategies tomorrow. Not tomorrow night, tomorrow night's gear, and then it's strategies later. But this is the freshest sign I think I've ever seen, and it was in this area. And you could tell it has that green, it kind of looks a little gray, but it was green hue because they were feeding in the pastures, probably strutting during the day. And then when they roosted up on this ridge, that was super fresh. It was almost steaming. Glades or openings, whether it be in the mountains, can almost serve as the fields too, where hens can nest nearby. So it doesn't rule out just because you don't have fields and stuff that you're not going to see birds. Excuse me. And these are excellent strutting areas for gobblers to show off for his ladies. Even in the case of mountains where you have these clear cuts or burn areas, lots of insects in them too in the summertime, and turkeys will roost in them, and they'll also have their broods in there for safety, for the cover, as was noted earlier as well. Here's a situation where this was mostly forested. As I visited years ago, the woods were wide open. They changed the habitat, created more succession for deer. Excellent turkey habitat to get in there for nesting. So the combination of the hardwoods or the pines that has areas like this are primo and good places to start out. As this was a similar picture to what Hannah showed, yeah, you're going to encounter a lot of this, whether it be in the Piedmont or Eastern North Carolina. These, again, are excellent, just like she said, and great strutting areas. And the turkeys will seek these places out. Whatever available habitat is there, as long as they have roost trees they have potential brooding areas, that can be good turkey hunting. Logging roads are also excellent. That was once where, yeah, logs were carried out, or maybe a private road. This was on a game lands. Grasses are starting to grow up. Even that can be suitable brood rearing habitat. And I've often seen nests along the road, even though this isn't really thick, they'll adapt to whatever's available, but they'll always choose the best, habitat for them that they can. Also, another one, this was in a national forest in New York. This was specifically a trail that was specifically planted. Absolute turkey magnets. They're going to use these for strutting zones. Setups, this is kind of talking about the tactics night again, which is the third night. But if I'm anywhere in ridge country, keeping that in mind what I said earlier that you're going to hear more about, with patterning your gun, you want to be in situations where that when that turkey appears, that you can take him, and being too close to an edge can get you caught, meaning you can be seen by the turkey. And I've had them flush many times. So setup points are critical. And if I knew that a bird was roosted down over this ridge, you best believe I'd be thinking about a spot that you can't see behind here, so that when that bird appears, I can harvest it. Again, you'll hear more about that. Curves and logging roads can be great too. I'm looking at these things when I'm scouting, a place where maybe a bird is down over here, you can't see it, comes up around, they're going to be just like us humans. They're going to follow the path of least resistance, and you're set up right along the edge here, or maybe even over here. As soon as he turns that corner, you got him. Wide open woods can be the toughest before green up, because keep in mind, wherever you are and you're calling, soon as that bird appears, likely out of the outside of your maximum effective range of your gun, he's going to want to see a hand. And if he don't see a hand, he gets suspicious. And then he's either going to circle either way, wide, or he's going to walk off. And we'll talk about some strategies again during our strategic session, how you deal with this. But the point here is using topography. So if I'm sitting down in this depression a little bit more, and then as we'll talk about, decoys were illegal, and they are in North Carolina, giving that turkey something to look at can potentially help, but not always. As the foliage gets a little thicker, it gets better because the turkey can't see from a far distance. You don't really need decoys so much, and it's still wide open here. But as it gets a little bit more, I'm looking for this place where, okay, I can set up here. I don't even need any decoys, and I'll let that turkey find me. And by the time he comes in, depending on how much foliage is, he will be within gun range, since will know your maximum effective range. So I'm looking at all this stuff while I'm out there. Logs can be barriers. And this is a tail fan I had set up. I was actually calling a bird on this ridge. He never did totally come in. That's a whole other story. But you never want to get one of these out beyond the maximum effective range of your shotgun. And that's because even though a turkey can fly over a ridge, fly over a creek, jump over a tree, whatever, they often have this innate ability to come up to a log. Being stubborn, he wants the hen to go to him, and he'll walk up and down it. And if that bird is not within gun range, you're done. So seeing these logs and thinking about your setups and any other habitat out in front that could present a barrier, even though it's not a real barrier, it's a barrier in that he'll say, okay, I came far enough. It's your turn now. So you see, turkey hunting is extremely exciting because it is essentially a chess game. And I can see I'm already running long, so I'm going to move. I'm going to start moving. Barriers or opportunities. That creek is a great one to cross. It's usually something I check out. It's a big tract of public land. I don't go in the accessible areas. I'll use that creek if it doesn't get too swollen. An old rickety bridge. That's my truck parked out there. That's another crossing area that most people wouldn't use, again, just to get away from the crowds. And I say that in terms of, in my home state, we typically have 3 times as many hunters as in North Carolina. So we truly know what a lot of people in the woods during a relatively short season is like. Friend has a boat from his property that allows me to get across. A little spooky at night when you're going across in that boat, but it can also get you away from other hunters. Things I'm looking for when scouting. That's me on the other side. Indoor ford that will often, if the creek gets high, No Priuses here. You likely want something that sits off the ground a little bit, and you won't encounter this in most places, but I have. Always know where you are, folks. That is extremely important, whether you're in this state or another state, and you can do it now more than ever easier with both Avenza maps in our state. Not all states have these georeference PDF, and of course OnX or a handheld GPS if you're still using it. I'm going to rock and roll here. Again, running a little bit long. Some preseason turkey hunting tidbits. This was my mentor. An uncle started me deer hunting, but no one knew about turkey hunting. So I was weaned on these things. They're still available if you like to shop on eBay. And these, if you can ever find them, they're gold. They would put a millennial to sleep, very slow, but lots of good turkey hunting knowledge, as do many of these other ones, and they're still out there. But you have the World Wide Web, so you don't even need those. Keep that in mind. The wild turkey is the teacher. There's no such thing as an expert in turkey hunting. The more you go, the more you're going to learn, and you'll never stop learning. 9 tidbits of turkey hunting wisdom. As was already said, you're trying to reverse nature. He'll give away his location and smell his poor. Fewer taste buds, poorly developed olfactory system. But there's 2 caveats to that. He don't always gobble. Some subordinates, lesser toms, we call them satellites, they may come sneaking in. That makes it tough. And if they're hanging out with deer, they can smell. And believe me, I've experienced that in the past. He has a mission, you have a clock. Your big disadvantage is impatience. Your advantage is persistence. Hunt when you can. There are no absolutes in turkey hunting. Keep that in mind. No absolutes. Turkeys are just like people, especially gobblers. They each have their own personality. The disclaimer is no matter what we say over the next 3 nights relative to, especially to tactics, you may try it and it won't work. Welcome to turkey hunting. Sleep now, you'll need it, especially if you're an early riser. As was already said, he can see far better than you, and you see what you should do if you like to move. His eyes deserve your respect. And the famous saying, and it was from one of our colleagues one time, I believe his father said this, Rupert, as a deer looks at a hunter and sees a stump, a turkey looks at a stump and sees a hunter, just like Hannah said, from egg to adult, something wanted to eat them. What makes a good turkey hunter? All these things. Experience, persistence, patience, attitude, willingness to learn, not afraid to try something new, whether with calls or something else. Respect for the turkey, respect for other hunters. Weaned on public land as a general rule. Public land birds receive pressure, not all and not much necessarily, but it teaches you to be more tactical than a bird, say, that just comes running to a gun or that you're able to pattern. And you got to get out there, obviously. You already saw this. It's not just about killing the bird, folks. And I can tell you that I've walked out of the woods many times, even five days a week. Didn't even hear one, but it keeps you coming back because there's far more than just killing a gobbler. The spoils of hunting will go to the unwavering persistent, and you can see where the rest go. If you harvest game consistently, whether it be deer or turkeys or small game, you are doing something right, and you want to keep doing it. It don't always happen overnight. Sorry for running long. And I'm going to just pop that up there a second, just so you know this. There will be a post-webinar survey. You will get that later on, but just read that about the wild turkey there. I don't always strut right to your call, but I do when it's 30 minutes after you left. I'm going to pull up the questions here. Eric, since you're there, do you want to mention the most common turkey hunting violations while I'm pulling these up?
Sure. Hope everybody's doing well this evening. My name's Eric Gleason. I'm your game warden in Caldwell County. Been working for the Wildlife Commission for about 10 years, for the state for about 12. So some of the most common violations we see during turkey season, and these aren't necessarily in any particular order. First of which is taking or hunting wild turkey with the use of native bait. As Deep already discussed, that is something in North Carolina that you cannot legally do. It is a very common violation that we run into. If you're convicted of that, you can lose your hunting privileges for up to 2 years, steep fines associated with it. The other ones are certainly tagging and registering your wild turkeys. As Deep mentioned again, you can print out your paper tags. Now most people are switching to the app to Go Outdoors North Carolina. Everything is right there in the app. It's very, very simple. You can just click on Report a Harvest. You'll answer a few little questions in the drop-down box. The county you're in, the weapon you chose, if it was a adult bearded turkey or a juvenile bearded turkey, if it was a bearded hen, game land or private land, and hit submit, and it generates your harvest ID number right then and there. So it's just a really quick, easy way to get your bird tagged and registered. And as Deep mentioned, you can do that with or without cell phone service. So even if you're hunting in the middle of the national forest with no cell phone service, your app will timestamp the time that you clicked submit harvest, and it will transmit that data as soon as you get back to service, and it will show that you the time that you tagged and registered your bird. It's important to remember that that bird must be tagged before moving the animal from the site of the kill. So that means as soon as you've shot that bird, you've confirmed that bird is deceased, before you pick it up and start walking out of the woods, it does need to be tagged. And then lastly, one of our most common violations is trespassing. You hear that bird gobble just a couple hundred yards across the property line, and you know the bird's hot, and you know that he's wanting to play ball. You just got to get a little bit closer, and temptation gets the best of people, and just don't do it. I'll tell some stories later in the series if we have time, some hunting accidents, hunting incidents that were related to people trespassing. It's not a good idea. You need to respect your landowners, respect your neighbors. Always ask permission before you go onto any property. So those are our 3 most common hunting violations. There are on our website, if you go to ncwildlife.org, under the enforcement tab, you can find every game warden in the state's phone number listed right there. I encourage you, if you have questions about a very specific county, a very specific game land, look up the officer in the county in question and give them a call or shoot them an email.
Excellent, Eric. Thank you so much, and so much and to the point. Thank you. Okay, and Rick, I believe, is already taken care of by Hannah. Can you please provide the number of contact WRC Help Development Wildlife Management Plan? And obviously, I'm thinking everybody can see that. If they can't, you can forward that on to me or to Hannah, and we can send that. Those are our district biologists, and yeah, they're getting paid to help you. Does a hen get bred multiple times in the same season, or is it a one-time thing per year, Hannah?
So a hen can be bred multiple times in the same season, and she can be bred by different males. And we know about 60% of the time she's bred by a single male, but about 40% of the time she's bred by 2 males. So she'll have multiple fathers in her nest.
Thank you. Can you talk about the difference between public land, game land? I hear people use both. Are they the same or the different? Well, I'll just jump in there and say yes. Public land is game lands. We call them game lands. Most states do. Some of them call them wildlife management area. But yes, it's one and the same. And do you have anything you want to add to that, Eric?
No, that pretty well covers it. Public land, game land. Other states use different words for that. There's state-owned game land and federally owned game land. In the very back of your regulations digest, it's got a list of every single game land in the state and the specific regulations that go along with that game land. So if you're thinking about hunting a new game land this year, pull up your Regs Digest, whether it's on your computer or your hard copy, and look up that game land and look up the specific regulations for that game land.
Thank you. You are hunting by a completely empty deer feeder that has not had food in it since the end of deer season. Is that a violation, Eric?
So again, the law states that all feed, all bait must be removed, completely and totally removed 10 full days before hunting the area. So if it's a feeder you leave up year round, you've not been running corn in it or, whatever you're running in it since the deer season, and it's been, dry for that long, you would be within that window. The key is that all that bait has to be removed 10 days prior to hunting it. And that is all the bait, to be very clear on that.
What is the cost of developing a land management plan with WRC members? Hannah?
There is no cost to the landowner whatsoever. Our WRC staff will help you create a management plan for free.
There you go. Are there any grant programs that are available to apply to for creating impoundments or green tree reservoirs? Is that a Hannah? Hannah, you have any idea about that?
Yeah, there are different programs through federal granting programs, through NRCS, Farm Bill programs. And if you meet with your wildlife conservation biologist in your area, I included the link up above for folks, that if you go down on our website to the Contact Us tab, on the bottom towards the wildlife management section, it'll have a link that'll have you to your wildlife biologist and your wildlife conservation biologist. And so they can help you figure out what programs you qualify and help you sign up for those grant programs if you qualify for them.
And just for the record, my wife and I do own some land in Caldwell County, and I, as a citizen, a non-WRC employee, I have had our biologists come out and help me write up a management plan, and they really, really do great work, and it is a great free service that is offered. I can't encourage you enough to take advantage of that resource.
There you go. Yeah, it is great. I hunt a lot from a kayak. What concerns or advantages should I be thinking about when hunting turkey from a kayak in the water? Eric, do you have any comments? I guess the first thing I'm thinking is you're like a moving turkey because you're likely not going to be anchored. That could be a little safety. I mean, obviously people do travel from one area. That's a great way to get the turkey spots, but I don't know. Do you think anything stands out?
Just make sure on those kayaks you are required to have a life jacket on board of that kayak by law. You don't necessarily have to be wearing it, but have that on board and be prepared for falling in the water. I mean, the odds are if you kayak a lot, it probably won't happen. But we've had opening days in Western North Carolina that it snowed. So if you fall in the water and it's 40 degrees out that morning or colder, be prepared for that. Be prepared for that emergency. Make sure you've got a plan in place. Other than that, yeah, it's like Deet said, it can really help you access some areas that other hunters may not access. But just be prepared for the the what if scenario.
Do we need to do anything for bird flu, Hannah?
No, you don't. Bird flu isn't a big issue in wild turkeys. We saw, a flock out in Wyoming a couple of years ago, but they are the only positive cases we've seen with it in bird flu. But if you're hunting other flock species or see dead and dying birds, it's always a good thing to wear gloves and to be extra careful when handling those birds to keep you all safe.
When will you know if you won a permit hunt? Well, I can say right off the bat, I've gotten permit hunts in the past and you will get emailed. And you can also check on them, right? Because I haven't gotten one for a while. You can actually go online, right, Eric?
Yeah, that's right. They'll typically draw in that first week of March, and then they'll announce it soon after. I would anticipate hearing in the first week of March, if not the first week. It'll certainly be by the second week.
Yeah. Can you just confirm for the record, blaze orange is not required for turkey? Absolutely. One more thing. Do you recommend it for safety from other hunters, or does it hurt with a turkey's great vision? Well, I guess I'll just give my spin of another state. It used to be in my home state, and again, hunter orange is not required. it used to be in my home state that you were required to wear orange when moving. So say if you were calling a bird, maybe you had your camo hat on, and if you were going to go towards that bird, or while you were doing like a cut and run like I do, you hear more about that later. Whenever you were moving through the woods to set up, you had to have your orange hat on. That law has since changed. That has gone away. So since they see color, yes. Anything to add to that, Eric?
No, I think you nailed it. I always do carry an orange hat in my vest in case I am lucky enough to harvest a bird while I'm carrying it to the truck. I will wear orange at that time, but by law, you are not required to wear orange while turkey hunting in North Carolina.
Can you give some recommendations for gaining permission for hunting on county-owned land, since that is different from public game lands? I do not have any idea. Do
I
you?
would say you need to get in touch with somebody from your county, whether that's your county commissioners or, if it's owned by, like if you're talking about like a landfill that's owned by a very specific division of the county, you're going to have to get in touch with somebody that has some kind of control over that property. And it's going to take some phone calls and probably a little bit of a headache. And, I don't want to discourage you, but I wouldn't be surprised if you got shot down there, just because the county, just like private landowners, they worry about liability and things like that. But you're just gonna have to get on the phone and make some phone calls.
Yep, and that actually helped me with a spinoff too, based on another call. You also have to be sure that depending on whether you're in city limits, firearms and/or a restriction. So talking like Eric said to those people in the municipality and/or even local sheriffs, so you just can't go in a plot of land that yeah, I mean there could be a lot of violations. So yeah, research it. Are there any tag along programs, or would anyone know who a new NC hunter could follow for learning turkey hunting regs and firsthand in the field learning? I'm mostly just intimidated by starting and don't know where to start. I grew up in hunting in Minnesota, but that was 15 years ago. One thing I can just add about this program is all the people that are involved in the in-person workshop. So I would suggest that you do attend an in-person workshop. Are you guaranteed a mentor? Absolutely not. That is a very much a limiting factor. What does happen though sometimes is there are a limited number of hunts where people can tag along. These are instructors that assist with post-workshop hunts, and that's usually at a designated time, and that's something you could be potentially involved. But depending on how many people, it could be, say, it could be one person, one observer, and then during rotations for the morning and evening. But by and large, I get a lot of people, a lot of volunteers that are interested in teaching the programming, but not on one-on-one. So, there may be a guided hunt. If you want like a guided hunt, you could Google that, because there are people that have paid hunts where there's lodging and everything else. But I'm just telling you programmatically. Do you have anything to add to that, Eric?
No, I don't think so. YouTube is your friend, or DVDs or VHSs. Whatever it may be, you can really learn a lot from YouTube. There's a lot of really
Yes.
good channels out there that can really break it down. And man, just don't be afraid to go just because you don't have a mentor. Man, go
Yes.
out there and try and fail and screw up and learn and be persistent and make mistakes. And I promise you, if you swing the bat enough times, you're eventually going to get a hit. So just don't let that be the only reason that you say, well, somebody can't take me, so I'm just not going to go.
Right.
And just go out and have fun and keep your expectations in check and just be willing to fail. That's really all there is to it.
Yeah. And I will promise you, if you attend the webinar and you go to a workshop, and now that I have these minis, but you missed the turkey minis likely, if you attend all that stuff and you say at the very end, and I joke about this, if you say at the very end, I really can't get this turkey hunting thing, Well, then I say, well, there's always ping pong, golf, spectator sports, because you'll get more thrown at you, even between these 3 nights of webinars. And if you attend a workshop, that there is nothing left unturned. And I will say, as someone that grew up with hunting mentors, I learned very little from my uncle, from a single mentor on how to hunt. I mean, he changed me and my brother's life by taking us out, but he was not an educator. You are getting primo education. And as Eric pointed out, the resources abound. So yes, don't be afraid. And some people chase that. I chased that. I wanted to do it on my own. So yeah, attend a workshop, we'll work together. Do I have to use a plug shotgun for hunting turkey?
No, you do not.
Is scent a concern while hunting turkey? Well, and Hannah, you can throw that in there.
No, you don't have to worry about smell. They have good vision and hearing, but scent is not one thing they are good at.
Unless he's hanging out with deer, because I've had that.
Deer will tell on you.
That's right, they will tell. All they do is go, and to the turkey, translated, it's saying there's a hunter over there with a large bore shotgun. I just want to make sure I understand. I need to remove old deer corn before I can hunt my private land for turkey. Eric?
So again, all bait must be removed 10 days prior to hunting that. Now, if you own a large tract of land, you can stay 300 yards away from it, but that is a 300-yard bubble. If you enter that 300 yards at that time, you would be violating the law. And we do run into that frequently, where people want to try to play that game and they want to put bait out, and then they want to get a little bit closer and a little bit closer, and then they end up, 100 yards from it or 50 yards from it, or sitting on top of it, whatever it may be. So the best course of action that I can recommend is, if you're on private land, make sure that all bait is completely removed 10 days prior to hunting that area.
Can you hunt turkey from a blind? Absolutely. And depending on your style, and we'll talk about that the other nights during the strategies, some like to move and call, move, set up and call, move, set up and call. But yeah, especially for someone that likes to move a lot, or if you have a young person with you that doesn't sit still. Is there a liability insurance for hunters you recommend? I have absolutely no idea. I know there are a couple people that provide it. I do not have it, but it does exist. And even your own carrier may offer something. Do you have any comments for that, Eric?
I do not. I just, do some Googling and look at reviews, and, I wouldn't necessarily pick the first one that popped up. Just look at some reviews online and, make a decision based on that. But I don't know of a specific one that I would or would not recommend.
Awesome. Not a question, but congrats on your upcoming retirement. Thanks so much. And you are more than welcome about the sharing. It's very easy to share a passion. Maybe you can do some fishing. Well, and an ironic share here. I was a big trout fisherman in Pennsylvania. Every spring I look forward to trout fishing the mountain creeks. And it just so happened that Virginia's opening day of Gobbler coincided with the first day Virginia's opening day of Gobbler coincided with the first day of trout in PA, and that was the beginning of the end. That said, since I won't have WORK, I'm going to try to squeeze in some fishing. Absolutely. Since Gobbler seek hens, should I practice more on hen calls than gobbler calls? That's not really something for tonight. That's going to be more for the other nights. But just having simple hen calls, it'll do it. And we'll talk more about the safety of gobblers using gobbler and gobbler calls tomorrow night. So we really don't want to get ahead. What is the best way to locate a turkey? Well, as I said in the former slides, get out looking prior to the season, and we are absolutely in that zone now. Get out looking for scratchings. They will give away their location. And far away, the best for a gobbler is start listening in the early morning. So if you're one of those people that start late and from work and you can get out there at daybreak, or do it on a weekend or whatever, that is the best way. And Eric, anything you want to add on that one?
No, man, you nailed it in the slides. Just scouting now, looking for tracks, looking for feathers, looking for scratching. And then as season gets just a little bit closer, go out early in the mornings, late in the evenings, listen for gobbles. That's pretty much it.
Yep.
Spend time preseason scouting. It will only benefit you.
Yep. Since we're going to wrap it up shortly, I want to share something with that quickly. When I was in manufacturing, spent 25 years in manufacturing before I came to wildlife. Every morning before I had to punch in at 6:30 in the morning, I was on the mountain at 4 o'clock, and it was about a 20-mile drive from home. And I would drive about a 3 to 5, 7-mile stretch. And I did that for like a month solid in advance, just listening for birds. And so it was easy for me to listen and know that they were there, but then I had to get some boots on the ground as well on some of the off days. So what you put into it, you'll definitely get out of it. But as I said, there are no absolutes. And so even when I was prepared and knew where they were, and we'll talk more about that with strategies, is you'll hear something like roosted ain't roasted. They don't always do what you think they're going to. So thanks very much to my panelists tonight, Hannah and Eric. Greatly appreciate you being here. Again, folks, I want to see you again for the next couple nights. Hope you're going to learn a lot more. We're going to really nail equipment tomorrow night, and then strategies the third night. You can do this from your own home. You don't have to travel anywhere. So please, if you're not already registered, do come. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And again,
you had one more question pop
oh,
up.
did it? Okay. Sorry. I've been told too much scouting on private land puts too much pressure on hunt areas. Well, prior to the season, yes, but I wouldn't want to be walking around there right before I was going to hunt. Any comments from you, Eric?
You just don't want to bump birds.
Yes.
Being on that private land and looking around isn't going to hurt anything. But you also don't want to go in there and push birds off of where they're feeding or where they're roosting, and you bump them and they fly, a county and a half, across the state or whatever. You just want to be in there and be in there softly. You don't want to be making turkey calls. You don't want to educate those birds, but there's nothing wrong with going in there and walking around and looking. It's a great time of year to look for sheds. Go out and look for deer sheds and see if you see any scratching, any feathers, any tracks, any droppings, whatever it may be. Just if you see them, don't get too close to them. Give them plenty of space and try your best not to bump birds.
Yep. Does the link we got today work for tomorrow? I said this in the beginning up front. So these links that you're getting, they are only for the live event. The recordings you will receive in less than or equal to 2 weeks. It takes time for our staff to pull them from a cloud and turn them into YouTube. And since that's out of my arena, that's what the communications folks, it got nearly 3 weeks. So you're getting the guaranteed live event now. If you wait for the completed link, then you're going to wait a while. And everybody that's in the portal, I pull them files, and they are the ones that get that recorded link. So make sure you are registered. So these links are, again, redundant, but they're only for the live event. They don't turn into the video.
So if he clicks this link tomorrow, will that take him to the webinar or?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so he needs
Absolutely
a separate
not.
link for tomorrow's webinar.
Yes, right. You'll get an right. Okay, then I probably missed that. You'll get a separate one tomorrow. And in fact, that brings up the point. At 2 p.m. is when the registration, day of event, the 2 p.m. registration close. That's when I pull the file for each individual webinar, and you'll get that from me tomorrow as well. So yeah, this link was only good for tonight. I missed that. Thanks for clarifying, Hannah. And with that, I think we're going to call it a night. Again, thank you for so much for being here. Thank you, Hannah and Eric, for the great job you did, and we hope to see you folks again.